So I'm responding to the claim that society fails to motivate individuals intrinsically. The opponent's secondary claims are: 1, society fails to motivate students intrinsically in schools; social norms fail to motivate students intrinsically; and social media fails to motivate students intrinsically. Before I start disputing her claims, first of all, her main claim uses the word individuals, and then her secondary claims all talk about students, so it's kind of misleading, so she probably should have been better about her word choosing. So my response to claim 1, society fails to motivate students intrinsically in schools. The speaker claimed that current students not knowing the meaning behind studies attributes to students not being motivated intrinsically in school. However, she failed to make the connection between students knowing the meaning behind studies and how that intrinsically motivates students. The speaker also used the example that Steve Jobs was not intrinsically motivated from school and he dropped out, which he did, and he dropped out after 6 months of college, but dropped in on creative classes for the next 18 months. In his 2005 commencement address at Stanford University, Steve Jobs recounted that one course in calligraphy developed his love of typography. The calligraphy course is still school, and thus that course did produce some intrinsic motivation in Steve Jobs. And if the speaker meant school as in science, math, and English, and not creative classes, she probably should have defined that. My response to claim 2, that social norms fails to motivate students intrinsically. Well, first of all, one of her examples was Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist minister and a social activist who defied social norms. The use of the Martin Luther King Jr. example contradicts her first secondary claims, and that school fails to motivate students intrinsically because Martin Luther King Jr. was unmotivated in school until his junior year at Morehouse College, when he took a Bible class which motivated Martin Luther King Jr. to pursue ministry. So in her secondary claim, like one of her examples, it contradicts her first secondary claim. The opponent also makes a claim on Oprah Winfrey and Walt Disney and how they defied social norms to pursue entrepreneurship, but does not state what social norms are being defied exactly. So again, there's a lack of connections from her secondary claims to her examples. Now in response to the opponent's third secondary claim, which was social media fails to motivate students intrinsically, the opponent makes the assumption that social media is used to motivate people, but social media is defined as a platform to make connections with family, friends, clients, or classmates, and connecting with people is not the same as motivating people. The opponent does give credible and reliable statistics on social media usage, but fails to show the connection between social media and how it affects intrinsic motivation. So the opponent makes good points on her claim, but falls short in making connections between her secondary claims and her main claim.
All right, well, I appreciate the argument that you're making on kind of an esoteric issue that's being discussed here. You go at it in a pretty straightforward way. It's easy to follow the structure, so that part's good. I think the advocate helps by having their argument relatively structured as well. You do suggest that there's a problem with inconsistency in the way the advocate defines some of the terms. They talk about individuals versus students in the plural form. I think that that's probably not a critical issue, and it doesn't get you that much in the long run. You never come back to that point, so I don't know why you bother with it. On the second part, where you're talking about schools fail to intrinsically inspire students, you basically go after the evidence that the advocate is using their particular example of Steve Jobs, and you seem to suggest that, in fact, Steve Jobs was motivated intrinsically by some elements of school, in particular classes that he took, and you had a specific example that demonstrated that point. So if that was the only example that the advocate used, then I think you've got a pretty good argument there. I don't remember the whole argument, and so if there was additional information on that point, I think it probably requires a little bit more response, and maybe you want to suggest that we're dealing with a hasty generalization here and challenge the reasoning process also. But the attack on the example, I thought was reasonable. On the idea of social norms creating motivation, the Martin Luther King example, again, we're doing the same sort of thing. You're going after the particular example, suggesting that this person actually does fit into the category. In fact, they fit in the category on the first point, seeming to deny this argument because they found a class that did in fact motivate them. I think it's interesting, by the way, that Steve Jobs, I just thought about this one here, Steve Jobs talks about this when he is actually speaking at a graduation at a university. So apparently he finds that there's some intrinsic value of going to institutions of higher learning, at least. Your challenge on Oprah and Walt Disney, it's okay. I mean, you ask a question here. Maybe it wasn't very clear in the original argument. Your question is fine. I think that there are a whole bunch of presuppositions here that suggest that society has to be responsible for doing all these kinds of things. I think there's some fundamental arguments about this that probably require a little bit more development, and maybe it's hard to do in the context of the speeches that we're doing here. Some people are motivated by different things. I think that that's definitely true. The fact that Oprah and Walt Disney were motivated, outside of the social norms, why that's a big deal, I don't know. And we're back to the same issues as a hasty generalization that's being made here. I think there are some arguments to be made there. And then the whole thing on the social media, basically your challenge is on what its function is to be in the first place. And I think that that's the right challenge there. Although, again, there are probably more that could be said here. All right. Thank you.